Explained by the Billy Meier contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Minoan civilization, see also Minotaur. Contact Report 055. Small Atlantis was destroyed about 6,000 years later, indirectly by the gigantic destroyer, the giant comet, which brought Venus into the SOL system 3,500 years ago. The enormous vibrations of the destroyer racing by and the following Venus caused enormous damage on Earth. It trembled, burst in many places, and huge volcanoes erupted. One of them was the existing Santorini. It exploded and tore various islands down into the sea within a wide radius, while the sea began to bubble and an approximately 2,000-meter-high tidal wave was generated, which rolled over today's Crete to Egypt and Syria. Crete was called Minoa at that time, and its inhabitants were Atlantean descendants. Many of them were still able to flee to the Hellenic mainland and thus save themselves. Minoa remained an island, but most of the islands of Little Atlantis around Santorini sank. Contact Report 125. Those, my friend, are the names, as I already promised them to you long ago. Note, this contact report contains a lengthy list of names and their meanings. Listed in accordance with our alphabet letters, I selected 21 male and 21 female names for you, as these were common on Earth about 14,000 years ago and were brought at that time by our direct ancestors. The names handed over to you come from two languages, the original Lyran and Vegan languages, but at the same time, different dialects were united by those living together on the Earth. Unfortunately, due to all the cataclysms in the course of thousands of years, only very few of these names were preserved or preserved in similarity. In the main, they only exist in old languages, which have already become historic languages on your planet and are only spoken very seldom. In many cases, however, they have also fallen to rather bad changes and distortions in these languages, so they are often hardly recognizable therein. Most values are still contained in the so-called Ancient Greek, but this language itself already represents a distortion, for truly this concerns the latest Minoan. Thus, that language which was spoken by the people of the Minoans, and which, by these, was taught to the ancient Hellenes Greeks, together with many things of their culture at that time, until the Santorini volcano exploded about 3,500 years ago and the Minoans had to flee to the mainland. Contact Report 159.
I have also noticed that various names are still common on the Earth today, sometimes in well-preserved or partially preserved form.
When these names were introduced on the Earth, these were given in 8 different languages, which were, nevertheless, all of Lyran origin. From this, new languages developed on the Earth over the course of millennia, from which then, primarily, the oldest languages known on Earth arose, but these strongly flowed through from the original languages introduced. The best-known languages that arose from it are Sumerian, Aramaic, Hebrew, Minoan, Celtic, etc. From the Celtic, for example, there arose many other languages, from which ultimately today's German language, the Flemish, and also other languages arose. From the Minoans, ancient Greek arose, and so on and so forth. And in all these languages, of course, the anciently introduced names were common, which have been received or modified in the course of time. What is still most commonly available today in names is found in those areas of languages that run in the Minoan direction, and which have been incorporated into the later ancient Greek, by which means they have been preserved to a large part up to this day, though often modified.
Contact Report 213.
Two factors were to blame for the fall of the Minoan culture, namely, on the one hand, the disorder of the Minoan society, which was very divided in some respects, and which created evil hatred in the various social structures, even due to the disagreement that the Minoan Empire threatened to fall apart. The cultural structures split apart, and soon the whole thing threatened to degenerate into a war of the entire citizenry, and thus of all levels of society. But before this could happen, a tremendous natural disaster occurred, namely as the Santorini volcano erupted and burst forth lava, gas, steam, and ash, whereby the ashes alone exhibited the large amount of 73.6 cubic kilometers. Also vast sulfur fumes belonged to this, whereby the whole atmosphere was so polluted and shrouded in a veil that the sun was darkened, and climate changes emerged from this, which lasted for several years. Low temperatures arose from the veil of smoke and dust in the atmosphere, which caused many years of harvest failures. The bad and poor harvests led to the Great Famine during the following period. In addition, the Santorini volcano did the rest, for as a result of its powerful eruption and the subsequent explosion, which triggered gigantic tsunamis that devastated the large areas of the Minoan island when the waters raged across the island, many buildings and lands were destroyed, while very many people lost their lives. The largest tsunami, however, the huge tidal wave caused by the explosion of the volcano, rolled far across the sea to Egypt, being red with the blood of countless slaughtered aquatic animals, whereby the river Nile then colored itself red, and many people in Egypt died. But the tsunami found no end in Egypt and rolled back into the sea, where it united with another tsunami, which was generated by the explosion of the Santorini volcano, and rolled eastward, where the country was destroyed once again and people were killed when the wild waters penetrated into the country.
Contact Report 551.
The Minoan volcano Thera, as it was called in former times, or Santorini today.
Contact Report 831.
This also applies to the research being carried on in Greece, especially concerning the Minoans, the Taurus, etc., who, supported and guided by the foreigners of that time, created very remarkable buildings and made jewelry, about which the archaeologists of today are still puzzling over who actually made them and where they came from, and so on. The fact that the ancestors of today's foreigners were the actual creators is something that especially those who carry a title and think they are clever, and think that they have eaten the knowledge with shovel diggers and are even wise, are unable to grasp due to their lack of understanding.